inflationary pain that they have felt for years here. The question is, when you put tech billionaires in the front row and it's aspirational, what the policies will do. And that'll be the big question for all of us reporters watching in these next couple of years here, is whether or not the American families who really do deserve from whoever they elect answers to the sort of inflationary pain that they have felt, whether or not they will reap the rewards, if you will, of any of these policies now coming.
That is the question. Will the American people, the forgotten men and women, will they be the beneficiary of this administration? Will this administration walk the walk? And look who gets the seats inside in the warm rotunda. I think one of the things that we miss with it not being outside is that this election in particular strikes me as not just the triumph of a man, although Donald Trump is the dominant political figure of our time, but of a political movement that actually predates him.
Accompanied by the Honorable Elaine Chao.
Yeah.
Former Republican leader Mitch McConnell entering. Obviously, John Thune now heads the Republicans in the Senate. And Terry, we'll get back to that thought in a moment, but John Carl, no love lost between Mitch McConnell and the 47th president, Donald Trump, and his return.
Look, Donald Trump relied on Mitch McConnell to get through much of his agenda for the first Trump presidency, including those 3 Supreme Court justices confirmed in large part because of the work that Mitch McConnell did. But yes, no love lost. Donald Trump, frankly, despised Mitch McConnell, and Mitch McConnell worked very hard against Donald Trump. He suggested he should face criminal prosecution after January 6th.
He talked about responsibility being Donald Trump's after January 6th, then defended him against impeachment. And Martha Raddatz, we're also seeing military leaders gather there, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs now, C.Q. Brown. And C.Q. Brown has to be a little nervous sitting there because Pete Hegseth, who is the nominee for the defense secretary, has said some rather disparaging things about him. That they want to review all of the generals, all of the general officers, to see whether they are the best for the job. And of course, again, a pardon today for Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
C.Q. Brown was sitting there alone when we took the shot of him moments ago, but I'm sure the rest of sort of the group of military leaders who will be assembled in that room will be gathered there with him. Again, you mentioned Pete Hegseth, the confirmation hearing. Many tough questions asked by Democrats. Joni Ernst, a Republican senator from Iowa, obviously all eyes on her, but she signaled afterward, Martha, that she will support him. It looks like Pete Hegseth has a very good chance at becoming the head of the Pentagon.
It certainly does, and that would be a huge change. He is very young. He does not have a great deal of management experience. He is, of course, a combat veteran, but they brought up his past. They brought up charges and accusations that he drank too much, which he basically said was anonymous smearing. He has also supported people who have been accused and convicted of war crimes. He was questioned about that, but it looks at this point that Pete Hegseth will be confirmed as defense secretary. Another thing I'm thinking about, David, as we watch all of these things in this welcome to the White House, is that if you ask Donald Trump today, whether he won the 2020 race, he would still say he did. He still believes that there was a problem with the election and that he is indeed the winner. And still, you have Joe Biden, Jill Biden welcoming back to the White House.
Jeff Bezos and his wife arriving there at the Rotunda, Martha. We were talking with Lindsay a moment ago about Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. Apple's Tim Cook will be there as well. You can see Mark Zuckerberg up there as well entering. And the combined wealth that many of these tech titans had strong words against Donald Trump 8 years ago and now have not only embraced him, but have donated money to the inauguration and are now front and center at the inauguration. And Rebecca Jarvis, our chief economics and business correspondent, again, you know, Americans are smart. You know, we've got a lot of cynical viewers too watching today, a lot of supporters who say it's time to really embrace technology, obviously, and America needs to be the leader in technology. But on the other hand, also asking, do they really believe in all the policies of Trump, or do they recognize he's the guy in power now? And if we want to steamroll ahead with fewer guardrails, perhaps, than what we were are facing under a Democratic administration. Is that driving why they've been so supportive too? Real quick, Rebecca, let me just mention here that former President Bill Clinton, former First Lady Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State, obviously she made history as the first woman nominee of a major party for president. She lost to Donald Trump, and you talk about these difficult moments, Kamala Harris facing in 2017, having won the popular vote by nearly 3 million votes, but having lost the Electoral College by 76,000 votes or so across 3 states. She talked about the pain of that day, but felt she was duty-bound to show up as a former First Lady, and she is back there today with Bill Clinton. But Rebecca, back to that question about Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. What's driving this? Why have they been so supportive? And now they have a front row seat.
Well, David, you raised the point. It is an interesting fact to see a number of these individuals who in the past had said things about Donald Trump that were not flattering, that were not pro-Donald Trump. And now they're making large donations. They're present at the inauguration. Some of them were present even at the very intimate church service. Not only are these individuals who have said things in the past about Donald Trump, but they've said things about each other in the past. You've had Bezos and Musk, not necessarily sworn enemies, but going head-to-head in the space race. You've had Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, head-to-head in social media. And now this group of individuals in the last handful of weeks leading up to this inauguration has been doing things like patting each other on the back, whether it's on social media or in major addresses for their companies. You're seeing a lot of that. It is potentially going to be a challenge going forward to both hold those interests as well as hold interests for the American people that the voters who put Donald Trump into office are particularly conscientious of: their wallet, their paycheck, seeing less of that going towards goods and services, seeing prices coming down. Donald Trump has a giant agenda, the 200 executive actions that we're expecting to hear from him today. Many of those things are economic actions, things like tariffs, immigration, the energy policy in this country. And it will raise some interesting questions for the early days of this presidency, because as we've heard in the past from people like Elon Musk, who is now running Doge, which is meant to reduce spending, that there could be near-term pain as a result of that. You can't necessarily shut down $2 trillion of spending in this economy and expect it to continue to grow as it currently is growing with 4.1% unemployment. At the same time, people are looking at those prices, that inflation, David, which is still up almost 3% from a year ago. Even though prices, or rather inflation, has come down dramatically, people want to see those prices go lower, and that has to be a focus of this president if the people who put him in office are going to get what they want.
Well said, Rebecca. Really a smart point there. And it's not something that you're alone in saying. Donald Trump has said it himself. In interviews after the election, he has acknowledged one of the main reasons he believes he won against Kamala Harris are grocery prices. He recognizes that. I'm sure his campaign saw that in the polling leading up to the election. Certainly, Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign saw that in the polling, which is why you saw her talk repeatedly about grocery prices, some of her plans. She didn't win the election based on those policies, but obviously focus groups were telling both campaigns that people have felt this inflation and they want a leader who's going to do something. And now the pressure really will be on, as you say, Rebecca, on Donald Trump and his administration, particularly when you see, and we just saw Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos arriving, these tech titans and these billionaires who've been very successful, and certainly no one is punishing them for that. This is one of the great things about America. The question is whether or not any of that opportunity and that sort of economic growth will be felt by the working class families who really have been feeling the pain these last couple of years and are expecting that with this change will come change for them as well. We're watching some of the arrivals. Jim Clyburn arriving moments ago, and Mary Bruce, you'll remember he played such a pivotal role really in Joe Biden becoming president in the first place.
he helped to resuscitate Joe Biden's, which at the time his campaign was really struggling. But it was that endorsement from Jim Clyburn that sent a powerful message to the party and resuscitated his campaign and put Joe Biden on the path to winning the presidency. It is just remarkable to see everyone in the same room there, really considering the divisions, deep divisions still in the Capitol. But it does strike me what a difference from 4 years ago. It does appear.
Rudy Giuliani.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, you could think back to when Donald Trump first came to office, and Washington really wasn't quite sure what they were in for, what was coming next. Republicans weren't quite sure how they were going to work with the incoming Trump administration. There was a lot of pushback. I covered the Hill at the time, and there was a lot of concern, and it appears we see some action at the White House here.
They are now emerging from the White House, and as we look at these pictures here, there's the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, and Usha Vance, who will be the second lady. They're getting into the motorcade. Now they'll travel together. It appears they're going to travel together. There were questions about whether or not they would. The first 4 cars will carry the most important people, if you will, those who are going to have the most power, certainly, in the country moving forward. The incoming vice president, the incoming president, obviously Donald Trump, will be in the car with Joe Biden. The principal 8, they call them. And this right here is the symbol of a peaceful transfer of power. This trip up to the Capitol now from the White House after the tea. So again, we watched Doug Emhoff and Usha Vance emerge, but none of the other principals as of yet, and we will go right back to that the moment we do, because these images are really sort of fascinating. And as we stay on these images here inside the Capitol Rotunda, let's stay in this live moment here, but I want to bring Rachel Scott into the conversation, our senior political correspondent, Rachel. And when you look in this room, you've seen Republican leaders gathering in this room as well. And certainly this Republican Party knows it is also very different from 2017. It is now 2024. Many Republicans have been elected in this Donald Trump era, and he arrives now with a lot more power than what he arrived with in 2017. They recognize this. They recognize he was the leader of their party in 2017 as well, but they tested him in a way that they won't be able to this time, because the voters sent him with both the popular vote and the Electoral College, and he helped.
Is going to take the oath of office, and he's going to go to the White House with majority in both chambers of Congress. And Republicans really do feel a sense of responsibility. Even the president-elect told me over the weekend to deliver on the promises that he made during the campaign trail. There have already been intense discussions underway on that big piece of legislation, or possibly 2 big pieces of legislation that could range from everything from the border to energy, that the president-elect wants his party to get done by April. Speaker Mike Johnson says that he hopes that the House can pass that bill by April. And in many ways, again, also you have Senate Republicans right now who are inside of the Capitol, and they are also considering Trump's cabinet picks. The president-elect told me that he wants them to get across the finish line as quickly as possible, and even some of the most controversial picks. We talked about Pete Hegseth a little bit earlier as well. It appears Republicans are falling in line, and it seems like there is broad consensus around Donald Trump, the president-elect's cabinet picks this time around.
Rachel Scott with us. Rachel's at Capital One Arena, which will become a significant part of this day a short time from now. It will replace the parade route that has become so customary every 4 years because of the weather, but there will be sort of an extraordinary array of events that play out there, and she'll be our eyes and ears right there inside the arena. We're watching the dignitaries now arrive. Donald Trump was asked earlier how he was feeling. In fact, this was the beginning of the day. St. John's Church, he said, "I'm feeling very good about this day," on his return to Washington now as the 47th President of the United States. My 2020 co-anchor Deborah Roberts also here in Washington covering this day. And Deborah, it's not often that this day, Inauguration Day, falls on the same day as Martin Luther King Day here in America. It did for Bill Clinton in his second term, and for Barack Obama, only because he was sworn in on a Sunday, which was the actual date, but then America witnessed it on the Monday, which was the day that they marked Martin Luther King Day. But here we have it again. And Donald Trump surely knows the importance, the magnitude of this day, and it comes after a campaign when he tried to reach out in greater ways to black voters across this country, once again making the case that my policies will benefit you in ways that the case he made was that the Democrats did not.
David, you're right, and it's interesting because to some degree, you sort of see a little bit of what happened in that campaign reflected here outside the Capitol Arena, where so many people have gathered outside the Capital One Arena hoping to get in. But I have seen such a swath of diversity out here, a big look at this country. And you can probably hear right now there are vigorous forces out here, kind of a town square look, if you would. People kind of coming at this from different angles. And to your point, yes, this is falling on Martin Luther King Day. And I happened to speak to his daughter, Dr. Bernice King, a couple of days ago about this. And she said that she was quite excited in a way that this is falling on her Father's Day. This inauguration, because it will encourage people to lean into looking at Martin Luther King, thinking about him, thinking about his teachings. And of course, when you hear the difference of opinions out here, that's exactly what she is talking about. But she cautions us, particularly those who may not be as excited about this day, and there are plenty out here who are, but for those who may be feeling despair and disappointment, she says that this is a reminder that her father was all about change and working toward change. And that, interestingly, is what happened when her mother was so bitterly disappointed when Jimmy Carter lost his election to Ronald Reagan. But then she continued to work and continued to push, and then it was Ronald Reagan who actually signed this holiday into law. So when you hear the competing factions out here like you do today, people coming at this from all angles, you are reminded that that's kind of what Martin Luther King was actually talking about people sort of airing their differences but coming together. And Bernice King says that this is a time to do this on this day, Martin Luther King Day. David.
Deborah Roberts and our conversation with Bernice King. Thank you, Deb. We're watching First Lady Jill Biden now leave to get into the motorcade. The incoming First Lady, Melania Trump, will join Jill Biden on that ride to the Capitol. 8 years ago, Melania Trump joining Michelle Obama in a motorcade to the Capitol. They talked about their children, among other things, on the route to the Capitol. Michelle Obama will not be there this year, Lindsay.
You know, it's interesting. Obviously, she's not the first. It was really, at least in modern day history, Melania Trump and Donald Trump who decided to serve as the first in modern era to not attend, for a sitting president to not attend their successor's inauguration. But Michelle Obama talked about this on a podcast not too long ago when she talked about attending Donald Trump's inauguration the first time around in 2016. She said to sit on that stage and watch the opposite of what we represented on display. There was no diversity. There was no color on that stage. There was no reflection of the broader sense of America. It will be interesting to see if Karen Pence is in attendance. Of course, we saw how there was kind of some chilly air. She did not acknowledge Donald Trump when he and Melania entered the church for Jimmy Carter's funeral. So a few no-shows of import potentially today.
And we took note that Michelle Obama didn't attend Jimmy Carter's. There's Susie Wiles, the incoming chief of staff in the White House, the first woman to hold that role. Much has been made about her relationship with Donald Trump. They're considered sort of a brother-sister type relationship. They defend one another. They work in private. And, you know, for all that Donald Trump has said in the past about chiefs of staff and others who have held similarly important roles in the West Wing, he's been deeply critical of them. You don't hear him say a critical word about Susie Wiles. So, John Santucci, what is it? What is the secret sauce here? What is it about Susie Wiles that has made her so darn effective at working with Donald Trump and for the most part, keeping him, you know, focused on the issue at hand as we now watch? Let me just take a moment here. We'll come back to you, John. We're watching Vice President Kamala Harris leave the White House.
Very well, thank you.
With the incoming Vice President, J.D. Vance. Let's listen.
Great, thank you.
He said, great, thank you. I gather they were asked, how did it go? How's the morning going? How are you? Elon Musk arriving there at the rotunda. A moment ago there in the image on the right. Sort of a split screen moment. Certainly on the left, that's quite something, because it's not simply we're no strangers to very close elections. This ended up being a 48-49 election, very close race.
It was an incredibly close election. It broke Donald Trump's way. He won all of those 7 battleground states, but David, every one of them was very close. And it was very close nationally. Oh, there you hear a question about executive orders. But look, that car ride, which is a tradition that goes back to the goes back to the 19th century, is really something else. Of course, it didn't always used to be an automobile. It goes back to the days of horse and buggy. And it's been really tense at times. That one you're seeing right there with the incoming and outgoing vice president, I'm sure is going to be a very tense ride. But between Biden and Trump, both of whom have exchanged accusations of being worthy of criminal prosecution. Trump actually prosecuted by the Justice Department under Joe Biden. If you look back in history, you see there's a famous photo of FDR riding in a convertible with Herbert Hoover in 1933, and they're sharing a blanket because it was very cold like it is today. And that ride may have been the chilliest till we get to where we are today.
Where we are today. I wonder if the vice presidential ride will be chillier than once you get Joe Biden and Donald Trump in that car. They seem to have shown that they are convinced the optics of this are what are really necessary for the American people, at least this time around. As Lindsay just pointed out a moment ago, it was the Trumps in these modern times who first sort of decided that they did not want to partake. They left at 8 a.m. 4 years ago. It still was Air Force One when he left because he was still president. And he said as he was leaving Andrews that it will be back in some shape or form, and now he's back as the 47th president. But to watch Joe Biden say, welcome home at the White House, Mary, with a smile, and to welcome him to the Oval Office a few weeks back, for them to meet for 2 hours and have Donald Trump ask Joe Biden, what's most concerning to you as you look around at all the world's hot spots? He was genuinely interested in what Joe Biden thought as well. Behind the scenes, and even Donald Trump acknowledged on that day, politics, and in so many words, is really ugly. But today's a beautiful day, is what he said in the Oval Office with Joe Biden that day.
It is remarkable when you contrast what we are seeing today to the divisiveness that we saw in the campaign, especially when Joe Biden was still running. I mean, they both argued that the other one was essentially unfit to serve. And yet here they are coming together for the sake of democracy to show this peaceful transfer of power. And David, you mentioned 4 years ago, I keep thinking back, I was standing there on the west front of the Capitol. Donald Trump, of course, was not going to participate. He had refused to admit that he had lost. He was leaving Washington in disgrace. He had been shunned by his own party after the attack on the Capitol, which was just days before that. He was facing a second impeachment. And yet, as I stood there, I looked up and I saw Marine One, which was leaving, Donald Trump leaving Washington, and yet he was circling the Capitol, as if he couldn't help himself but to get one last look at what was going on. And now here he is. As you mentioned, when he left at the time, he had said he would be back in some form. He actually departed there from Andrews to the sound of Sinatra's song, I Did It My Way, playing, and he has done it his way. And doing it his way has now led to this really remarkable comeback, though he doesn't want to call it that.
Which takes us right to the moment here. Both leaders emerging from the White House. Senator Klobuchar, who was running the inaugural committee. But all eyes on these two presidents. So, guys, I think we figured it out. It'll be Amy Klobuchar who can give us the inside scoop from inside that car, the readout. But there you have it, Donald Trump Joe Biden in the motorcade as they make that trip up Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol. Something we did not see 4 years ago, but again, both, Martha, were convinced that this is something the country needed to see today.
And it is something the country needs to see because the country is so divided. Seeing these two presidents, former president, future president, present president, is important to the nation. Look, there are people out there who voted for Donald Trump who don't particularly like Donald Trump, but they like his policies. They like what he promised. They like the changes he wanted to make. So he had their support. So going into this day, despite the history, despite what Donald Trump still believes, that he lost that election in 2020, they were able to come together and make this historic ride back in the beast, as that limousine is called, the historic beast. Donald Trump looked very happy getting inside that. Joe Biden, of course, I noticed he touched the hand of the agent before. It was probably, as we said before, saying goodbye to staff. It's the same staff over and over. They serve presidents, but they make a very, very strong bond.
Mary Jordan, to be in that car.
You know, not always do they have a third person. It's very interesting that Amy Klobuchar is there. The last time in 2017, Roy Blunt, senator from Missouri, was in the car, but that was because of the interesting that Amy is there. But Donald Trump has a high threshold for awkwardness. Right. I mean, Marco Rubio, you know, called him a con artist, and he called Rubio a lowlife, and now he's his nominee to be the Secretary of State. So we have seen over and over again that Donald Trump doesn't seem to mind the most awkward situations. Melania Trump is his third wife. His second wife is here in Washington. She's been posting pictures. Marla Maples, the mother of Tiffany. You know, I mean, people don't even like to go to Thanksgiving dinner with kind of awkward family members. This guy can do it in front of a couple billion people that are watching around the world today.
Mary, I think that's such a great point. I mean, that is why we are seeing today so many families in this country. And perhaps you have it in yours, where a Thanksgiving dinner or a family reunion or a gathering where you have a politically divided belief system, you know, even within your own family or your own friends, that if Donald Trump and Joe Biden can get in the car and ride to the Capitol. I will say about Donald Trump, he does seem to be very well equipped at understanding political theater, understanding the game that's involved in politics and how cutthroat it can be. He alluded to that, Mary, in that Oval Office meeting when he said, boy, this can be really rough stuff. Yeah. But today, it's a beautiful thing. And this moment right here is also something that, quite frankly, the people who show up, who vote, who take part in democracy, even if they think differently from their neighbors, but and put out their signs, and yet they still go, they vote. They believe in the system, and they deserve to see this today.
And to your point, if they can sit together in the car, albeit with Amy Klobuchar as a bit of a buffer, perhaps there's hope for everyone's divided families at the Thanksgiving table. It is remarkable. And yes, Donald Trump, no one does political stagecraft better. And even though, of course, you aren't seeing perhaps as large of crowds outside as he would have hoped, given the bitter cold out there, you certainly are still hearing many out there cheering. And he is going to find ways throughout the day to continue to have those indelible images, even though we won't see that traditional parade down Pennsylvania Avenue. I do have to mention, you know, we did discuss earlier those pardons, those preemptive pardons that Joe Biden left a bit of a parting gift there as he was making his way out of office this morning, pardoning so many who he's concerned that will be targeted by Donald Trump. Anthony Fauci, General Milley, Liz Cheney. And you did see a bit of a grimace, I thought, on Donald Trump's face as he walked out of the White House just then. And we have seen reports that Donald Trump has now responded to another outlet about those pardons, calling them disgraceful, saying that many are guilty of major crimes. So it's clear that Donald Trump perhaps didn't particularly particularly appreciate that last-minute move by President Biden, but Biden felt it was important to do, even though, of course, none of those officials have been convicted of any crimes, but the president wanting to proactively and preemptively protect them, given that Donald Trump has promised retribution.
Really interesting as we continue to watch this motorcade head up to the Capitol. If we could do a split screen, if that's possible, folks, in the control room, perhaps of just the emergence from the White House of Donald Trump and Joe Biden, just to see that facial expression from Donald Trump one more time. Because, John Carl, you noticed it too. Yeah. They did spend about 45 minutes there behind the scenes. I don't think Donald Trump drinks coffee or tea. On my interactions, it's always a Diet Coke or a Coke. But here they are emerging.
Well, I can report to you that when they spent 2 hours together in November, yeah, look at that. That does not look like a particularly warm walk out into the car. When they did spend their, by the way, I think as you see as Donald Trump gets into the car, you look through the window, it looks like he breaks out his cell phone, maybe to check his text messages, which is also something that's quite unusual. I see him looking, it seemed to me like he reached and he is, you know, looking at his phone. When they got together in November, they didn't drink coffee or tea, because as you said, Donald Trump doesn't drink coffee or tea. They didn't drink Diet Coke. There was no food served. I was told there was nothing but water for 2 hours. Yeah. But it was a warm meeting, according to my reporting on that. This, I don't think, will be as warm a ride. And I do believe that it's notable that Biden's pardons that are issued at this moment came just as we've learned that Trump is issuing an executive order essentially calling for an investigation into the investigators, including some of those who were pardoned.
That's right. So soon after this inauguration, we'll begin to see some of that executive action. Those orders take place. We'll dive into it all. You're not going to miss a thing here as they arrive here at the Capitol. We'll fit in a quick break, and we'll be right back with our live coverage of Donald Trump's inauguration in the Capitol, Joe Biden together, and we'll be right back.
ABC News live coverage of the second inauguration of Donald J. Trump returns in a moment.
We ready? I need to get me a new phone. You need to trade in that old busted up phone. You can get you a brand new iPhone 16 Pro from T-Mobile. It's on them. At T-Mobile,
Existing customers, trade in your busted old phone, and T-Mobile will give you a...
I need to get me a new phone. You need to trade in that old busted up phone. You can get you a brand new...
Big Guy's best plans plus streaming.
T-Mobile is one of none. Go get that.
What he said. Families save 20% every month. What a deal.
To all you new and existing customers, trade in your busted old phone, and T-Mobile will give you a brand new iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence.
AFC and NFC meet again in flag football.
Touchdown. Other Big Guy's best plans plus streaming.
T-Mobile is one of none. Go get that.
What he said.
The 2025 Pro Bowl games. This year's stars show off their...
This room at 2204.
Did you kill him? Xavier, is a part of you happy that Cal is
football? ESPN and...
All here to help them. We're gonna make this happen.
You're amazing. You slayed it.
I love everything about you.
Oh my gosh.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce me.
Which you do you want to be today? At TJ Maxx, you can afford to turn your closet into a place of endless expression. With the quality you deserve, styles you crave, and prices you love.
I'm gonna do.
Ask what makes you, you.
People was tripping.
Where are you going?
He was actually saying goodbye to his old phone.
I'm switching to the amazing new iPhone 16 by T-Mobile.
It's the first iPhone built for Apple Intelligence. That's like peanut butter on jelly on gold.
At T-Mobile, get iPhone 16 on us. Plus, families can switch and save 20% on plans plus streaming versus the other Big Guys.
Mobile, slow down.
Amanda Riley was a mother, wife. Everybody loved her.
I heard the words, "You have stage 3 blood cancer."
We
thought she was God's gift, but she was a liar.
Why would somebody fake cancer?
There's all these pictures of her in the hospital. It was only a matter of time until Amanda's whole world came tumbling down.
And stream on Hulu.
Welcome back to live coverage here on ABC News. The motorcade arriving at the Capitol. Again, we've been talking about the motorcade carrying both presidents, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. That was Joe Biden right there, I believe, just disappearing behind the wall for a split second. Hard to actually see from this angle. And we were talking about their age, Martha. It's interesting, you know, Donald Trump is actually older than Joe Biden was when Joe Biden was elected to office 4 years ago. I think Joe Biden was 78 years old, 61 days. Donald Trump is 78 years old, 7 months, nearly 79 years old. The oldest ever to be elected to the office. There you see Joe Biden right there. We're about to see Donald Trump as well. But that says something.
That's a lot of age in the back of that beast. About 160 years combined with Joe Biden, now 82 years old. And when you think about the next 4 years, of course, Donald Trump would be 82 when he leaves office. We see him there. Age, of course, was an issue during this campaign, but much more with Joe Biden.
And Senator Amy Klobuchar, who, as I mentioned, is the chair of the inaugural committee, sort of leading the way. She actually rode in the motorcade, the two of them. You know, Donald Trump always looks serious at these moments, though, so I'm not sure it's necessarily reflective of their conversation, but look at the two of them. This is extraordinary. And you think about that first debate where Joe Biden